2:13 a.m. You up, sweetie? I think a wife deserves to know what her husband sounds like when he's actually happy. Sleep tight. Jezebel. Vivian Reeves read the text twice, then she read it a third time. Slowly, like a recipe she was checking for a missing ingredient. Her bedside lamp was on. Her husband's side of the bed was cold and made, same as it had been for the last 41 nights. A cookbook sat open across her lap, the page on choux pastry, the page she'd read maybe 100 times in 3 years, because reading about pastry was the closest she let herself get to making any. The next text came through. A screenshot, then another, then 12 more, in a rapid burst, the phone vibrating against her thigh like a thing trying to bite her. Vivian did not open them right away. She set the cookbook on the nightstand, closed it, marked her page with the silk ribbon the way her mother had taught her, took a small sip of the lukewarm peppermint tea she'd made an hour ago, and only then did she pick up the phone. She read every single screenshot, beginning to end, calmly. There were 47 of them, 3 years of marriage flatlining inside an iPhone screen at 2 in the morning, while a man named Judas Reeves, and yes, she'd married a man named Judas, and yes, she'd been told it was a family name, and no, she had not laughed at the time, sent another woman pet names he had never once used for his wife. The final screenshot was the one Jezebel had clearly saved for last. It was a photograph of Vivian, asleep, in her own bed, taken a week ago by her own husband, forwarded to his mistress with the caption, "See what I have to come home to." Vivian sat very still. She did not cry. She did not shake. She did not get out of bed. She did 3 things. She screenshotted Jezebel's entire thread, top to bottom, every name, every timestamp, every photo. She opened her contacts. She scrolled past Mom, past Pastor Daniels, past her 2 college friends, past the dentist, to a single letter saved at the bottom of her favorites list. B. A number she had carried in her phone for 11 years. A number she had never, in 11 years, dialed once. She forwarded the entire bundle. 47 screenshots, the screen recording of Jezebel's thread, and 1 line of text she had written and rewritten in her head 100 times over the last 41 cold nights without ever knowing the moment was coming. I would like this handled. V. She put the phone face down on the nightstand, switched off the lamp, pulled the duvet up to her chin, and Vivian Reeves, soft-spoken, pastry-trained, the woman every person in her life had quietly decided was weak, went back to sleep. What happens in the next 48 hours is going to make you uncomfortable. Good, uncomfortable. The kind you cannot scroll away from. So before we go 1 inch further, tap subscribe and ring the bell, because YouTube tries very hard to bury stories like this one. And I'm not in the mood to let it. Now. 12 time zones away, in a glass office in Seoul, a man named Bae Joo-won was about to look down at his phone and read a sentence he had been waiting 11 years to receive. Bae Joo-won did not look like a crime boss. That was the first mistake everyone who'd ever underestimated him had made. The American journalists who tried, the Russian consortium that tried, the cousin in his own family who tried. They all made it. Joo-won was 35 years old, lean, quietly handsome in the way a knife is quietly sharp, and he wore his suits the way a doctor wears a coat, like equipment. He was in his office on the 72nd floor of a building in Gangnam when the message came through. 3:47 p.m. Seoul time. The walls were glass. The desk was empty. The only thing on it was a single Celadon teacup, half full, and the phone that had just lit up against the wood. He saw the letter V on his screen and stopped breathing. For a beat. Just one. Then he picked up the phone. He read every screenshot. He read them with the same composure he read intelligence briefings. He did not flinch at the photo of Vivian sleeping. He did not flinch at the caption. He flinched at exactly one thing, a screenshot dated 6 weeks earlier, where the husband, Judas, had texted Jezebel that he had just transferred another $40K out of the dumb cow's trust account. She still hasn't noticed, LOL. The dumb cow. Joo-won's jaw moved. Once. The kind of micro-movement a man makes when he is reordering 11 years of patience into a new shape. He closed the message thread. He opened a different app. He typed one word in Korean to a man named Sun Woo in Los Angeles. Sijack. Begin. Then he stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looked down at Seoul rolling toward dusk, and, very quietly, in English, to no one, because there was no one in the room, Bae Joo-won said, "Hello again, Vivian. If this is already pulling you in, drop one word in the comments." Forwarded. Just that. It tells YouTube to push this story to the kind of people who would not have scrolled past it. Now, let me take you back, because to understand why Vivian Reeves had a Korean Mafia Boss saved in her phone under one letter, we have to go back 11 years, to a back alley in Seoul, to a man eating noodles, and to the night a soft-spoken pastry student got cornered by a man she trusted and decided, without quite knowing she was deciding it, that she would never trust her own ability to fight back again. Vivian was 20. She was on a culinary scholarship, pastry specifically, the only thing she had ever been confident about, and she'd been in Seoul for 4 months. She loved it the way only a quiet kid from Atlanta with 2 passport stamps loves a city she's been told she'd never see. She loved the way the bread smelled different, the way old women on the subway adopted her in 8 seconds and tried to feed her, the way her hands had finally started to behave on the bench because the instructors at her school did not ever soften their critiques because she was the only black girl in the room. Her mentor at the school was a producer, a Korean man in his 50s named Cho. He was famous. He had reasons to be famous. He was very good at his job and had a wall of awards and a wife who did not ask him too many questions. And he had been mentoring Vivian for 11 weeks. The alley happened on a Thursday. There was a dinner, a very small one, only 6 students, very prestigious, and Cho had told Vivian to stay behind, just for 10 minutes. He wanted to give her notes on her final project. He poured her a glass of soju she hadn't asked for. He told her she had a real future if she understood the kind of attention she was being given. He told her she should be grateful. He used that exact word, grateful. When she got up to leave, he followed her into the back alley behind the restaurant, and what happened in the alley was that he grabbed her wrist, just once. But the moment a man you trust grabs your wrist and you realize in that 1 second that the rest of the night is going to be a negotiation you did not consent to, that is a moment that lives in a woman's body forever. It is a clock that does not reset. It is the moment Vivian Reeves stopped being a girl who believed she could handle anything by being polite. She did not scream. She did not slap him. She froze, which is what most women freeze, which is the thing no one tells you about. What she remembered afterward was the sound of chopsticks. Specifically, the sound of a pair of chopsticks being set down very deliberately on a porcelain plate. A man stood up from the noodle counter just inside the open back door of the restaurant. He was 24 years old. He was alone. He had been eating jjajangmyeon and reading a paperback novel. He set the chopsticks down. He walked into the alley. He didn't raise his voice. He did not raise a hand. He simply stood beside Vivian, exactly close enough that Cho understood the physics of the situation had changed, and he said, in calm, polite, almost bored Korean, 3 sentences that Vivian did not understand a word of at the time. What he said, she'd learn later, was approximately this: "You will let go of her wrist. You will not contact her again. You will be on a plane out of this country within 2 weeks, and you will not return to your industry, because if you do, I will find this alley again, and I will not be holding chopsticks." Cho let go of Vivian's wrist. Cho was on a plane to Vancouver 11 days later. Cho's production company quietly dissolved within the year, and his name disappeared from every credit on every project he had touched. No headlines, no public scandal, just a slow, immaculate erasure. But that night, in the alley, the young man simply turned to Vivian. He spoke English with a soft accent. He asked if she was all right. She wasn't. He walked her back to her dormitory. He did not ask for her number. He did not ask her name. He gave her his. Then he wrote a phone number on the back of a receipt for jjajangmyeon and pressed it into her palm. "Save this," he said, "under any letter you like. If anyone ever hurts you, once, that is all you have to use this for. I don't even know you. Bae Joo-won, Vivian Boateng. It is nice to meet you, Vivian Boateng." A small bow. "Please, save the number." She did. She walked into her dormitory room and immediately, before she'd even taken her coat off, opened her contacts and saved that number under the letter B. She did not call it when she got mugged in Houston a year later. She did not call it when her father died. She did not call it the night Judas Reeves came home drunk in their second year of marriage and slapped her so hard her ear rang for 3 days, and she told her mother she had walked into a cabinet. She did not call it for 11 years. She called it for the screenshots. And here's the part of the story I want you to sit with for a second, because the screenshots were not actually the worst thing that had ever happened to Vivian Reeves. They were not the loudest. They were not the most violent. They were just, finally, the thing that snapped a wire in her she did not know was still load-bearing. The wire that said, "Be polite, be patient, be soft, be the woman everyone has decided you are." The screenshots did not break her. They woke her up. Let me tell you about Judas Reeves, quickly, because he is not interesting, and pretending he is would be a disservice to the woman who married him. Judas was 38. He was tall. He had the kind of jaw that photographed well. He had grown up in old Connecticut money, old enough that nobody worked anymore, young enough that the money was starting to feel less like a fortune and more like a slow leak. His father had been a lawyer. His grandfather had been a banker. Judas was a wealth advisor, which in Judas's case meant a man who answered emails twice a week and lost money for people who could afford to lose it. He met Vivian at a charity gala in Atlanta when she was 26. She was catering the dessert table. He told her, in front of her supervisor, in front of her mother, in front of a senator, that her cheesecake was the best thing he had eaten in a decade, and he was going to marry the woman who made it. He proposed 8 months later. She said yes because she was 26 and her father had just died, and a charming Connecticut man with sad eyes and a good jaw promised her she would never have to be afraid again. Here is what nobody at the wedding knew. Vivian's father had died with one asset to his name, a trust. He had built it for 20 years. He had told her the week before he passed that it was for her bakery, the one she had been dreaming about since she was 9, the one she had a binder for, the one she had a name picked out for. Boateng and daughter, 2 locations, one in Atlanta, one in Brooklyn. "Don't touch the principal, baby, just the interest. You'll never have to be afraid of a kitchen." Judas knew about the trust by the second date. He spent the next 8 months convincing Vivian, gently, persistently, with the kind of charm that wore down a soft woman in a slow, soft way, that the bakery could wait, that his investment career was on the verge of breaking, that her dreams were beautiful and deferred, not lost. He used that word a lot, deferred. He liked the way it sounded. The week after the wedding, he asked her to give him power of attorney on her accounts, just for tax purposes. She gave it to him. By their 3rd anniversary, Judas had quietly siphoned $487,000 out of the trust. None of it had gone into investments. It had gone into Jezebel, into a Tribeca apartment in his cousin's name, into hotel rooms, into a Cartier love bracelet Vivian saw on Jezebel's Instagram one Tuesday afternoon, and recognized as the same bracelet Judas had told her 2 months earlier that he could not afford to buy her for their anniversary. Vivian saw the bracelet. She did not say anything. She told herself she had not seen it. She told herself a lot of things in those 3 years. That his coldness was stress. That his late nights were ambition. That the slap, the one slap, had been a moment. That the steady, slow drain of her father's trust was just temporary cash flow. Until 2:13 a.m. Until Jezebel Lin, 26, half Korean and half Chinese, ambitious in a way that had no floor, decided that the final step to becoming the next Mrs. Reeves was to break Mrs. Reeves first. What Jezebel did not know, what Judas did not know, what Vivian herself did not fully know yet, was that the woman whose softness they had been counting on for 3 years had been waiting, very quietly, for one of them to do something she could not pretend not to see. The screenshots were that something. We are back in the bedroom now. 2:14 a.m. Vivian has just put the phone face down on the nightstand and rolled over. She did not, in fact, fall asleep right away. I want to be honest with you about that. The script will not lie to you and pretend she just closed her eyes and was out. What happened was that Vivian Boateng Reeves, soft-spoken pastry student turned soft-spoken wife, lay in the dark for 38 minutes with her hands folded across her stomach, the way her grandmother used to fold them at funerals. She did not cry. She did something quieter than crying. She inventoried. She thought about the bracelet on Jezebel's wrist. She thought about the photo of herself sleeping. She thought about every single time she had laughed at one of Judas's jokes that wasn't funny because the wrong laugh got punished. She thought about her father, 81 days before he died, putting his hand over hers in the hospital and saying, "Baby, be careful with men who love your money before they love your hands." She thought about the alley in Seoul. She thought about a young man eating jjajangmyeon. She thought about the receipt. And somewhere around 2:51 a.m. she fell asleep, not because she was tired, but because for the first time in 3 years she had handed something to someone else, and her body did not know what to do with the lightness of that. Across the world, in Gangnam, Bae Joo-won had already not slept. He had not gone home to sleep. He had walked across his office to a wall, safe behind a Yi Jung-seop painting, and he had opened it. Inside the safe were 3 things: a handgun he had not fired in 9 years, a passport, and a manila folder. The folder said one word on the tab: Vivian. 11 years of folder. Joo-won had not stalked her. I want to be very precise about this because I know how that word lands. He had not watched her sleep. He had not bugged her phone. He had not tracked her movements. What he had done, quietly, every quarter, with the same Korean detective firm, was paid a man to verify, once every 3 months, that the woman who had not yet called the number was still alive, was still working, was still safe enough. The first time the detective came back with "She is married," Joo-won closed the folder for 48 hours and did not open it. When he opened it again, he had made a decision. He would not interfere. She had not called the number. The number was a door, and the door was hers to open, and he had spent 33 years on this earth not yet being the man who pushed. So he waited. He waited through Judas, through the bracelet, through the slap. Yes, he knew about the slap. The detective had a way of finding things out that did not require microphones, through the slow drain of the trust. He waited because the door was hers. And tonight, at 3:47 p.m. Seoul, 11 years after he had pressed a noodle receipt into a 20-year-old's palm in a back alley, Vivian Boateng Reeves had finally opened it. Joo-won closed the folder. He picked up his phone. He made 3 calls. The first was to Sunwoo in Los Angeles, already moving, already half a city ahead of him. The second was to his pilot. The third was to a Korean-American attorney named Min Park, who picked up on the second ring even though it was almost midnight on the West Coast, because some clients you pick up for. Vivian Boateng Reeves, Joo-won said, the trust her father left her. I need every dollar Judas Reeves has moved out of it traced and frozen by sunrise tomorrow Pacific time. I need every joint account paused but not closed. I do not want him to know yet. I need a forensic accountant standing at the bank when it opens, and I need her told gently, by you and not by me, that the money is hers again. Tell her I asked you to call. Tell her she does not have to talk to me unless she wants to. A pause on the other end. Joo-won. Is she? She is asleep, Min. He looked at his own reflection in the dark glass of the window. She is finally asleep. If this story is hitting, do me a favor, drop a like on this video right now. It tells the algorithm that this kind of slow, quiet revenge story deserves to find the next woman who needs it. Now, back to Jezebel. 4:11 a.m. Pacific. Jezebel Lin was still awake. She'd sent the texts at 11:13 p.m. her time. She had assumed, and she'd been very confident about the assumption, that Vivian would respond within 30 minutes. A flood of texts, crying, begging, asking why, the way wives always did in the Reddit threads Jezebel had read for inspiration. Jezebel had her response ready. A long, condescending, almost loving reply. The kind a winner writes to a loser to make the loss permanent. But Vivian had not responded. Not in 30 minutes, not in 2 hours, not in 4. By 4 a.m., Jezebel was sitting at her kitchen island in a silk robe, refreshing the conversation, scrolling, refreshing again. There were no red receipts. There was no typing indicator. There was, on the screen of her iPhone, only the cold, smooth fact of a woman who had been sent 47 screenshots at 2 in the morning and had not bothered to react. That was when she heard the knock on her door. Not the buzzer. The door. She lived on the 11th floor of a Tribeca building with a doorman. The doorman had not buzzed, which meant the doorman had let 2 men come up without buzzing, which meant the 2 men were not the kind of men her doorman said no to. Jezebel did not answer the door. She walked on bare feet across her own apartment and looked through the peephole. There were 2 men in the hallway, Korean, middle-aged, beautifully dressed. They were standing easily, as though they had all the time in the world, which they did. One of them, without looking at the peephole, without looking up at all, said very calmly, "Miss Lin, my name is Sun Woo. I work for a man you have not met. I'm going to ask you to open the door, and I'm going to promise you in advance that nothing physical will happen in the next 11 minutes. I will be very clear. Not now, not later, not at all. You will not be touched." A pause. "I'm also going to ask you to understand that if you do not open the door, the next people who knock on it will be from Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Your visa, as you know, has a clerical issue. I have the paperwork in my pocket that fixes the issue. I also have the paperwork that does not. 11 minutes, Miss Lin. May I come in?" Jezebel opened the door. What happened in the next 11 minutes was not violence. It was worse. Sunwoo sat on her white leather couch with his coat folded across his lap. The second man stood by the window and did not speak. Sunwoo set a leather folio on the glass coffee table. He opened it. He did not raise his voice. "My employer," he said, "is a man you do not know, and you do not need to know. What you do need to know is what he is offering you, and what he is offering you is mercy. I am told mercy is not a word you have heard often in your line of work. I will define it for you." He turned a page in the folio. "You have, in the next 23 hours, 3 things to do. First, you will call 3 of Mr. Reeves's clients at numbers I will give you. You will tell each of them, in your own words, that you have been Mr. Reeves's mistress, and that you have witnessed him moving client money in ways the SEC will find interesting. You will do this from a phone we will give you, and the call will be recorded. Second, you will deliver every email, every text, every photo, every piece of evidence you have on Mr. Reeves to this address on the laptop in front of you, which is now mine. Third, you will leave the country. There is a flight to Hanoi at 8:40 p.m. tomorrow. Your sister, as you know, has just been admitted to medical school in Boston. Her admission, as my employer has confirmed, has a number of paperwork issues that can be either resolved or not resolved by people he knows. The choice between resolved and not resolved is yours, and you will make it tonight. He closed the folio. He stood. You have been operating, Miss Lynn, under the impression that you are a predator. You are not. You are a courier. You delivered a message tonight that we needed delivered, and we are grateful, and this is your severance package. Do not look for Mr. Reeves. Do not look for Mrs. Reeves. Do not look for me. Your flight is in 20 hours and 40 minutes. I would pack lightly. He nodded to the man at the window. They left. Jezebel Lynn stood in her white kitchen for 23 minutes without moving. Then she sat down on the kitchen floor, and for the first time in 6 years of being Jezebel Lynn instead of the girl she had been before, she cried. She was on the 8:40 p.m. flight to Hanoi, 7:22 a.m. Pacific. Judas Reeves came home. He had spent the night at Jezebel's, except for the last 3 hours of it, which he had spent in the lobby of her building, banging on the elevator buttons, because at 4:33 a.m., Jezebel had stopped answering his calls and the doorman had refused to let him back up. He let himself into the brownstone he and Vivian rented in Brooklyn Heights. The lights were on in the kitchen. He could smell butter, real butter. Vivian had not cooked breakfast in their kitchen for 10 months. He came into the kitchen. Vivian was at the stove. She was wearing the silk robe he had bought her for their first anniversary, the one she had stopped wearing 2 years ago because it made her feel, she said quietly once, like a bird in a cage that had been described to her as a nest. She had it on this morning. She was making eggs over easy his way, with chives. Her hair was loose. She did not turn around. "Morning, baby," she said. "Long night?" Judas froze in the doorway. He did not know yet. He had no way of knowing yet. Sunwoo's calls to Judas's clients would not begin for another 90 minutes. The SEC inquiry, already drafted, already routed, already on a desk in Lower Manhattan, would not be filed until 9:30 a.m. The forensic accountant standing outside Judas's bank would not enter the bank until it opened at 9 a.m. The trust would not be officially frozen until 9:14 a.m. Judas had 98 minutes left as a man with a life. He didn't know. "Coffee's on," Vivian said, still not turning. "Eggs in 2. "Vivian," he cleared his throat. He was reading her tone the way he always read her tone. For permission, for danger, for the soft little signals she gave when she was upset that he could massage into apologies later. He found nothing. "Baby, you're up early. Couldn't sleep? Anything on your mind?" "Mm-hmm." She slid the eggs onto a plate, set it on the marble island, finally turned around. She was smiling. Vivian had a beautiful smile. She had not given Judas Reeves this particular smile in 3 years because this particular smile required, as a precondition, that the woman behind it had stopped being afraid. "Eat, baby," she said. "You're going to have a busy morning." Judas sat down. He ate the eggs. They were the best eggs he had ever had in his life, and they were also, although he did not know it, the last meal he would eat in that house. 8:53 a.m. Pacific. Judas's phone rang. It was his biggest client, a man named Halverson, who had $11 million under Judas's management. Halverson did not say hello. "Judas, I am going to do you the courtesy of telling you this in real time. I just got a phone call from a young woman named Jezebel Lynn, who informs me that she's been your mistress for 6 months and that you have been moving my money into a vehicle she has the paperwork for. I will be at your office at noon with my attorney. I expect every dollar I have ever given you in liquid form by 4 p.m. today, or I will be calling the SEC personally." The line went dead. Judas stared at his phone. Vivian was pouring herself a second cup of coffee. The phone rang again. Another client. Same call. "I just got a phone call from a Jezebel Lynn." And again. The third one came at 9:11, the fourth at 9:18. By 9:23 a.m., Judas Reeves had 4 clients leaving him, an SEC inquiry filed against him, and a phone full of voicemails from journalists. By 9:31 a.m., his mother called. She was sobbing. She had just received, by anonymous courier, a printed packet of 47 photographs of Jezebel Lynn, including the one of Vivian sleeping with the caption. His mother said, "Judas, what did you do?" He hung up on his mother. At 9:47 a.m., he tried to access his bank account, frozen, all 4 of them, the joint checking, the joint savings, the investment vehicle, the trust. He stood up so fast he knocked over his own coffee. Vivian. His voice had changed. There was something new in it, a thing she had heard exactly once before, the night of the slap. "Vivian, the trust is frozen. The bank says, the bank says they got a forensic order. Who did you call?" "Vivian, who did you call?" Vivian set down her coffee cup. She walked, calmly, around the island until she was on his side of it. She looked up at him. She was not afraid. That, more than anything else that had happened that morning, was the thing that finally undid Judas Reeves. He had been the largest thing in any room she had stood in for 3 years. He had been the weather. He had been the law. And now she was looking up at him with the same calm interest she used to take to the bench when she was decorating a tier of petit fours and he was, for the first time, small. "Don't ever raise your voice in this house again, Judas," she said, very quietly. "Don't ever touch me again. Don't ever look at me again the way you are looking at me right now. There are exactly 2 things I want you to do. The first is to leave. The second is to never come back. There is a man arriving in this kitchen in about 90 seconds who's going to make both of those things much, much easier for you." The kitchen door opened. Bae Joo-won was standing in it. He had flown in, from Seoul, on a private jet. He had been in the country for 41 minutes. He was wearing the same suit he had been wearing in Gangnam at 3:47 p.m. the day before, and he had not slept, and he did not look like a man who had not slept. He looked like a man who had arrived. He did not look at Judas first. He looked at Vivian. For a long, slow moment that the camera, if there had been one, would have had to slow down, for Joo-won and Vivian looked at each other across the kitchen of the house she had been quietly dying in for 3 years. 11 years of looking at each other from very, very far away. And now this. Joo-won's eyes did not say anything dramatic. They said one thing. "You called." Vivian's eyes answered. "I did." Then, and only then, Joo-won turned his head and looked at Judas. "Mr. Reeves," he said. The English was beautiful, precise, almost gentle. "You have until midnight tonight to be out of this house. You will leave the keys on the table by the door. You will leave your phone. You will leave the credit cards, all of which have been canceled. You will pack 1 bag, and you will leave on foot, and you will not contact this woman again. If I see you in the same room as her for the rest of either of our lives, Mr. Reeves, I will not be polite. Do you understand?" Judas, entitled, vain, third-generation Connecticut, the man who had married a black girl from Atlanta because he thought her grief was leverage, looked at Joo-won, really looked, and he understood in 1 second the kind of man his wife had been quietly sitting next to for 3 years. He left in 19 minutes. Joo-won did not assume. This is what I want you to hold on to about him. After Judas was gone, after the door had closed, after the silence had reached the corners of the kitchen the way silence does after a storm. Bae Joo-won did not cross to her. He did not touch her shoulder. He did not say finally. He stood in the doorway, politely. "Mrs. Reeves," he said, "Boateng." She corrected him without thinking. I haven't filed yet, but it's Boateng. I'm going back to Boateng." "Miss Boateng." A small bow. "I have booked a hotel 3 blocks from here. I will leave in a moment. I would like to ask before I leave if there is anything you need." She looked at him. She thought about it. She thought very specifically about the 11 years she had spent not calling the number, about the alley, about the noodles, about a young man who had pressed a receipt into her palm and given her a key and then waited 11 years for her to use it. "Joo-won." "Yes." "Sit down." He sat at the marble island, carefully, like a man who had not eaten in 2 days and did not want to ask. Vivian crossed to the pantry. She opened the cabinet over the refrigerator, the high one, the one Judas had used to hide his bourbon. She took down a wooden box that she had not opened in 3 years. Inside the box were her mother's measuring cups, her grandmother's silver pastry cutter, and a tiny laminated card the size of a business card with the words Boateng and daughter, opening soon printed on it in her own 22-year-old handwriting. She set the box on the island. She tied her hair back. "Have you eaten today?" she said. "No." "Do you trust me with breakfast?" "Miss Boateng," he said, and his voice did something it had not done in 11 years on the phone with anyone. "I would trust you with anything you offered me." She made him pain au chocolat from scratch. It took her 2 hours and 17 minutes. He sat at the island the entire time. He did not check his phone. He did not look at his watch. He watched her work the dough with her bare hands the way a sculptor watches another sculptor. And he ate the first 3 pieces she put in front of him in silence, and on the 4th piece he closed his eyes for 1 full breath, and Vivian Boateng saw the youngest man she had ever known him be. "You are extraordinary at this," he said. "I haven't done it in 3 years. You should never go 3 days without doing this again." A pause. He set the fork down very precisely. "Forgive me. That was an opinion. I do not have a right to it." "You have a right to it." She said it before she thought about it. They both heard her hear herself say it. She set her own fork down. "Joo-won, why did you give me that number?" He took a long time to answer. He looked at the pastry on his plate. He looked at her hands on the marble. He looked finally up at her face. "I was 24 years old," he said. "I walked you to your dormitory. By the time we reached the door, I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life waiting for you to call. I expected, at the time, that the call would come in maybe a year, maybe 3, maybe never, which I had also accepted. I did not expect 11 years. I would have waited 20 more. I would have waited every year I had." The kitchen was very quiet. "Why didn't you come find me?" she whispered. "Because the door was yours. I almost didn't open it." "I know." "Joo-won." She did not move. He did not move. "I want you to stay tonight, in the guest room. Not because anything is decided, because I do not want you to be in a hotel 3 blocks from me on the first morning of the rest of my life. Will you stay?" Yes. He stayed. He took the guest room. He hung his suit jacket in the closet of a room that had never been used. He slept the first full night of sleep he had slept in 9 years, and down the hall, Vivian Boateng, soft-spoken, pastry-trained, the woman everyone had decided was weak, fell asleep in her own bed, alone, but for the first time in a long time, not lonely, just by herself, which is a thing she had forgotten was different. We are in the final stretch, and if you're still here, good. You are exactly the kind of person who deserves this last part. Because the part of the story Vivian thinks is over, isn't. There's one more thing she does not yet know. And the only reason I'm telling you before I tell her is because I want you to subscribe before I tell her. Hit subscribe. Ring the bell. Part 2 of this story, what happens to Vivian and Joo-won, is coming, and you do not want it buried. Now, the twist. 6 weeks went by. Judas Reeves, broke, disgraced, living in his mother's pool house in Greenwich, tried to do the only thing he had left. He went to a journalist. He told her that his ex-wife was married to a Korean crime lord, and that the entire collapse of his career was an organized hit by an international criminal organization. The journalist did not publish the story. She did not publish the story because, although Judas did not know this, the journalist was on Joo-won's quiet payroll and had been for 6 years, and not for reasons related to Vivian. Vivian did not know that either. She would. The twist did not come from the journalist. The twist came from Jezebel. Jezebel Lin, 6 weeks into her life in Hanoi, where she was teaching English at a private elementary school, and not for the first time in years, sleeping with anyone, called Vivian, from a Vietnamese number, at 10 in the morning Vivian's time. Vivian almost didn't answer. She did anyway. Mrs. Reeves, Boateng. Miss Boateng, I'm calling to thank you. Jezebel, please, just let me. I know I don't get to call you. I know I don't get to. I need to tell you that what they did to me was the kindest thing anyone has ever done to me, and I will not waste it. And I'm sorry about the screenshots, about the photograph, about all of it. But mostly, I'm sorry that you didn't know. A pause on the line. Didn't know what, Jezebel? The pause got longer. Didn't know. Miss Boateng, didn't you know about me? I assumed by now they would have. I assumed you to her been told. Told what? A long, awful silence. Jezebel made a small sound, the sound of a woman realizing she has just stepped on a wire she did not see. Miss Boateng, I was hired. 18 months ago, I was hired to do what I did. The job was to be Judas's mistress. The job was the screenshots. The job was the 2 a.m. text. The man who hired me, he never used a name on the phone, but he wired through a firm in Seoul, and tonight I am calling you because I cannot live another month not knowing if you knew. Vivian was sitting at her kitchen island. She had a cup of coffee in her hand. She put it down very carefully so it would not spill. Jezebel, I want you to listen to me very carefully. You are about to tell me one thing, and you are only going to get to tell me one time. Are you saying that you, Jezebel Lin, were hired by the man who is currently asleep down the hall from me to seduce my husband, to send me those screenshots, to engineer the moment that ended my marriage? Yes, ma'am. You're sure? Yes, ma'am. How sure? I have the wire receipts, Miss Boateng. I have the contract. I have the burner phone he gave me. I have the dates. He paid me $140,000 over 18 months to do what I did. I am only telling you because I have just spent 6 weeks not being his asset, and I think you should know who you let into your house. Vivian was quiet for a very long time. Then she said, Thank you for calling, Jezebel. Don't call me again. I hope your school year's good. I hope you are kind to those kids. She hung up. She sat at her island for 19 minutes without moving. Then she walked down the hall. Joo-won was at the kitchen table when she came in. He had made coffee. He was reading a book in Korean. He looked up at her face, and he knew, instantly, the way he had always known, that something had moved between the last time he saw her and this one. Jezebel, she said. He did not deny anything. That was the first thing about him she had always loved. He set the book down. He folded his hands. Tell me, he said, what she told you. Vivian told him, word for word. When she finished, Joo-won did not speak immediately. He looked at his coffee. He looked at the morning light on the floor. And then he looked at her, directly, the way he had looked at her in the alley 11 years ago, the way he had looked at her in this kitchen the day Judas left. And he said the thing he had been carrying for 2 years like a stone in his shoe. Yes, he said. I hired her. Vivian sat down on the stool across from him. She did not run. She did not yell. She did what Vivian had always done, what was both her gift and her cage. She sat with the truth and let it speak. Explain. 2 years ago, I read a report from my detective that said Judas had begun to take from the trust. I had, until that moment, kept my promise to myself. I had not interfered. I had not opened the door for you. But when I saw what he was doing, when I saw the slap the year before that you did not tell anyone about, I made a decision that I am about to defend, and you can decide what to do with my defense. He took a breath. I knew you would not leave him on your own. I knew that the woman I had met in an alley in Seoul, the woman who had not called the number after the slap or the trust, was a woman who had been trained by a culture, by a father, by a marriage, to absorb harm rather than escape it. I knew that the only thing that would force you to use the key I had given you was a wound large enough that you could not metabolize it quietly. I did not want to deliver that wound, but I could not bear to keep watching you take smaller ones for the rest of your life. Vivian was very still. So I hired Jezebel Lin. 18 months ago, she was a graduate of a private security training program I have funded for 12 years. She was vetted. She was paid. Her assignment was to seduce Judas Reeves, document his cheating, his theft, and the kind of man he became when he believed no one was looking. And then, when the documentation was complete, to send it to you. In a way you could not unsee. You engineered the betrayal. I engineered the delivery of a betrayal that was already there, Vivian. I did not invent Judas Reeves. I did not invent his contempt for you. I did not invent the slap or the bracelet or the photograph he took of you sleeping. Those were his. What I did was design the moment in which you would finally have to see them. I did not want to be your savior. I wanted you to be your own, and I knew you would only be your own if the cage door was held open in front of you in a way you could not pretend not to see. She closed her eyes. He kept going, quietly. He had clearly rehearsed this in his head, and what was painful, what landed, was that he had not rehearsed it to defend himself. I knew it was a betrayal of your autonomy. I knew the second I made the decision. I told myself, when I made it, that if you ever asked me, if you ever found out, I would not lie. I would tell you exactly what I did, and I would not soften it, and I would not act as though I had a right to it. I did not have a right to it. I took it, because I loved you, and I was not willing to watch you die slowly for one more year. That is the whole of my defense. I do not expect it to be enough. If you would like me to leave this house and never return, I will leave it in the next 10 minutes, and you will never see me again, and the trust will remain yours, and the protection will remain yours, and you will hear from me one time only. On the day you marry someone else, you will receive a single white envelope with a single line, and that line will say, I am very glad you are happy, and nothing more, for the rest of either of our lives. That is the offer. The kitchen was quiet for a long time. Vivian opened her eyes. She looked at him. She had not, in 11 years of knowing him, in 6 weeks of living 3 rooms away from him, in 3 years of being someone else's wife, looked at him quite like this. Joo-won. Yes. You are not allowed to take from me again, not a small thing, not a large thing, not a betrayal you engineer because you think it is for my own good, not a kindness you arrange in the dark. If you ever again make a decision about my life without telling me first, you and I will be over, and I will not call you, and you will not write the white envelope, because there will not be a wedding day to send it to. Do you understand me? I understand you. You took something from me that was mine, the right to discover my own husband on my own time, in my own way, even if I never did. You decided I could not bear it. You decided I could not survive without your hand on the scale. That was not your decision to make. Even if the result is one I am today glad of, the result does not absolve the method. You know this. I know this, Vivian. And I'm sorry. She held his eyes for a long, long time, long enough that the coffee got cold, long enough that the sun moved across the kitchen floor. Then she reached very slowly across the table. And she took his hand, and she turned it palm up, the way he had once turned hers in a back alley in Seoul when he pressed a noodle receipt into it, and she traced a small circle in the center of his palm with her thumb. "You can stay," she said. "Vivian. You can stay, on 3 conditions. The first is what I just told you. No more decisions in the dark, not ever. The second is that you understand I am not today your wife. I am your friend and your guest, and the woman who you sat 11 years in an alley for, and the woman who will, when she is ready and not before, decide whether what we have together is a marriage. The third is Joo-won. Yes, you're going to learn to make pain au chocolat. I am going to teach you, because the next time you betray me, even for my own good, I want it to cost you something other than money. Get up, wash your hands. We are starting in 5 minutes." Joo-won, feared on 3 continents, the head of an organization that the FBI had spent 6 years failing to photograph, got up from the table. He washed his hands at her sink. He tied her grandmother's apron around his waist. And Vivian Boateng, soft-spoken, pastry-trained, the woman everyone in this story had quietly decided was weak, pulled out her grandmother's silver pastry cutter, smiled at the man she had taken 11 years to call, and began to teach him. Judas Reeves took a plea 4 months later. 8 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of grand larceny against the estate of his late father-in-law, 1 count of insurance fraud. 9 years. No parole for 5. His mother sold the pool house. His name came off the only thing he had ever really been, the masthead of his family's company, an entity older than the country it was incorporated in. Jezebel Lin stayed in Hanoi. She is, the last anyone heard, very good at teaching English to children, and she does not anymore send messages at 2 a.m. to anyone. And Vivian Boateng opened a bakery in Brooklyn 9 months after the morning of the eggs. She named it the only name she had ever wanted to name a bakery: Boateng and Daughter. The sign on the door is in 2 languages now: English, and, in smaller letters just underneath, the Korean characters that Joo-won, who is not the daughter but is for now the man who shows up before sunrise every morning to help her unstack the chairs, painted there himself one evening with a brush he was not very good at using. The characters say, roughly translated, "The soft ones get the last word." If you made it all the way to the end, you are absolutely my kind of person. Vivian's story is not over. There's a Korean detective in Seoul who has questions about the 11-year folder. There's a journalist on Joo-won's payroll who, 6 years ago, was hired not for Vivian, but for someone else, and that someone else is still alive. And Joo-won's mother lands at JFK in 8 days. She has not been told yet that her son has been making pain au chocolat in Brooklyn at 4 a.m. Part 2 is coming. Subscribe so it finds you. Ring the bell so YouTube can't bury it. And tell me one thing in the comments. When Jezebel called Vivian and told her the truth, when the savior turned out to be the one who engineered the betrayal, did you forgive him? Or did a part of you, just a small part, wish she'd shown him the door? Be honest. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.